This presentation will discuss why alcohol consumption should be a concern. Here I will present the situation with a focus on Quebec. As was mentioned in an earlier presentation, alcohol consumption is associated with many chronic diseases as well as acute injuries and problems. And in Quebec, we observe an increase in alcohol consumption in the population and in binge drinking. This presentation will be in two parts to cover these two situations. Alcohol consumption in the population. The indicator used to describe and monitor alcohol consumption is per capita pure alcohol consumption. Statistics Canada provides this indicator by collecting data on the volumes of sales of alcoholic beverages, beer, wine, and spirits. These products have different alcohol concentrations. So, Statistics Canada calculates the volumes of sales in pure alcohol or ethanol. To do this, the volumes of sales are multiplied by the percentage of alcohol content. For example, the volume of sales of beer is multiplied by 5%, for wine is 11.5%, and spirits 40%. Finally, the volumes of sales of pure alcohol is divided by the population age 15 years old and more. This slide shows the trends in per capita consumption in liters of pure alcohol for all types of alcoholic beverages in Quebec from 1986-87 to 2009-10. We can see from 1987-88 to 1993-94 a decrease from 8.5 liters to 6.8 liters. After a few years, the stabilization, it started to increase in 1997-98 up until 2009 and 10 from 6.9 to 8.5 liters. Here we see these trends, but by type of beverages. We can see that beer is the alcoholic product which is the most drunk by the population in yellow. In red we see the wine in second and the spirits in. While beer and spirits have been stable over the years, we see an important increase in the consumption of wine, mainly since the end of 1990s. This slide shows a comparison in the trends in per capita consumption in Quebec and Canada. We see that in blue, Quebec has always been lower than the Canadian average, which is in red here. However, with a sharp increase since the end of the 1990s, it reached the Canadian average in 2000-2001 and is now even higher than the one in Canada with 8.5 liters in Quebec and 8. Next question is, how does it compare with other provinces? The slide shows the per capita consumption in liters of pure alcohol in the Canadian provinces in 2010. We see here a big difference from the highest consumption to the lowest, Newfoundland being 9.6 liters of pure alcohol, while people in New Brunswick drink in average 7.2 liters. In between, we see that the second is Alberta, then BC, Quebec, PI, Saskatchewan, Nova Scotia, Manitoba, and Ontario. This slide shows that other provinces have the same trend in alcohol consumption than Quebec. These are PI, Saskatchewan, and Nova Scotia. In the previous slides, we could see that these provinces were in the middle of the provinces in terms of alcohol consumption. Here we can see that all of them had a decrease at the end of the 1990s and a constant increase since then. Here we have more detail on each provinces, which are separated in western provinces and in the next slide into eastern provinces. Here we have British Columbia to Ontario, and we can see these trends from 1990 to 2010. Again, the trend for the eastern provinces from Quebec to Newfoundland. And here we see that Newfoundland is much higher than other provinces. Another interesting question is to know how Canada compares with other countries. Here we have OECD, and for the last available year, 2008 or 2006 for a few countries such as Italy, Spain, and Belgium. We can notice that the consumption in Canada is higher than the one in some Nordic countries such as Norway, Sweden, Iceland. It's also higher than consumption in Japan and Italy. We also notice that for many countries, the per capita consumption is higher and more in the 9 and 10 liters per capita. I want to focus here attention on two types of countries. First, Italy, which is the first green arrow on the left, and France, which is the last arrow on the line on the right. Both countries experience a very important decrease in per capita alcohol consumption in the past 30 years, where in France it was higher than 20 and Italy close to 20 liters per capita. On the other hand, two other countries, United Kingdom, the first red arrow, and Ireland, which is next to the last country in this graph, with 12.4 liters of alcohol per capita, had a very important increase in alcohol consumption in the past 30 years, where it used to compare to countries like Canada before. Our second concern is binge drinking. By binge drinking or heavy episodic drinking, we mean for men 5 or more drinks per occasion and for women 4 or more drinks per occasion. Just to remind you that a drink in Canada contains 13.6 grams or 17 milliliters of pure alcohol. So for beer, it's about 12 ounces, for wine 5 ounces, for fortified wine 3 ounces, and for spirits 1.5 ounces. All these drinks contain the same amount of pure alcohol. Statistics Canada in the Canadian Community Health Survey has an indicator of 5 or more drinks per occasion for both men and women. So there's no differentiation between women and men, and it might be an underestimation for women, but it gives us interesting information. They have this indicator when people drink this amount at least once a month, and for population aged 12 years old and older. Here we see that the proportion of drinkers who had heavy episodic drinking at least once a month increased from 18.2% in 2000-2001 to 22.4% in 2009. This increase is statistically significant. The blue line shows the same pattern for women with an increase which is statistically significant, and also in men, which is the red line. This increase in heavy episodic drinking at least once a month is present in all age groups of adults. In all age groups, this increase is statistically statistically significant. In underage drinkers 12 to 17, the orange line, there's a slight decrease, which is not statistically significant. Here we see that the proportion of heavy episodic drinking at least once a month was lower in Quebec than in Canada in 2000-2001. Again, it was statistically significant. However, in 2001, the proportion is the same, 22.4%. To conclude, what do we do with this? First, it would be interesting and important to study the trends in mortality and morbidity attributable to alcohol in order to know what are the consequences of this increase in alcohol consumption and in binge drinking. We should study and monitor the chronic diseases and acute problems. It would also be important to improve policies in order to curb down these trends. Finally, it's necessary to inform the public to get support. Public should be informed on trends in alcohol consumption and potential consequences, and also on healthy policies related to alcohol.